My name is Eliza Langford. I am 35 years old, and at my younger sister's wedding, my mother decided my entire life was something she could turn into a joke. She did it with a champagne glass in her hand, a perfect smile on her face, and half the ballroom listening like my humiliation was part of the evening's entertainment. The speeches were supposed to be about love, family, and a beautiful new beginning. Instead, my mother looked across the table at me and laughed. "Look at you," she said, loud enough for the nearby guests to turn their heads. 35 and still single. Will anyone ever choose you? A few people gave those nervous little laughs people make when they know something is cruel, but do not want to be the first one to object. My younger sister froze beside her new husband, but she did not stop it. My father leaned back in his chair, smirked like he had been waiting for his turn, and said, "Some people are alone for a reason." That was the moment something inside me went completely still. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I did not give them the broken reaction they expected. I simply set my champagne glass down, stood up slowly, and smiled at both of them. Then I said, "I am already married. You did not deserve a seat at my wedding." The silence hit the room harder than any scream could have. My mother's face went pale. My father's smirk vanished. My sister whispered my name like I had just shattered her perfect day. Then my mother snapped, "What does that mean? Explain yourself right now." And for the first time in years, I was ready to tell them exactly why they had been left out. Before I tell you what happened after that, tell me honestly, if your family humiliated you in front of everyone, would you stay quiet to protect their image? Or would you finally let the truth burn the whole room down? My mother's name is Patricia Langford, and for most of my life, she believed a family was only as valuable as the image it could present in public. My father, Martin Langford, believed the same thing, but he was quieter about it. He had a way of looking at you that made you feel like a disappointing investment. We grew up outside Charleston, South Carolina, in a neighborhood where every lawn looked trimmed by hand and every front porch looked ready for a magazine photo. My mother built her identity on being admired at charity luncheons, bridal showers, and Sunday service. She knew which families had money, which daughters married well, and which women had failed to control their children. In her mind, losing control was the greatest shame a mother could suffer. My younger sister, Sienna Langford, made that image easy. She was polished, social, photogenic, and always willing to smile for a picture. By 28, Sienna had turned herself into a small lifestyle name around Charleston. She planned weddings, posted videos about table settings, and made people believe choosing the right napkin color was a moral achievement. When she got engaged to Graham Prescott, my mother acted like the family had won a public award. Graham came from the kind of family my parents respected before they even met him. His parents had old money, country club connections, and a last name people recognized. From the moment Sienna got that ring, my mother spoke about the wedding as if it were proof that she had raised the right kind of daughter. Then there was me, Eliza Langford, 35, older sister, unmarried as far as they knew, no children, no matching holiday pajamas, no husband at Thanksgiving, and no interest in turning my life into a display case for my mother's approval. I worked in cybersecurity, protecting hospitals and medical networks from ransomware attacks. I had built a company that helped emergency rooms keep running when criminals tried to lock down patient records, surgical schedules, and trauma systems. I had consulted with hospital boards, spoken at medical security conferences, hired teams, and helped prevent disasters most families would never hear about because the best work in my field happened quietly. But quiet success meant almost nothing in my family. If my mother could not post it with a flattering photo and a caption about blessings, she did not know how to value it. When people asked about me, she would smile too tightly and say, "Eliza is very career-focused." Then she would lower her voice like she was sharing something tragic and add, "We are still praying she finds someone." My father was worse in private. At family dinners, he asked when I planned to settle down, as if I had been floating through life instead of running a company, paying my own mortgage and taking care of myself since my 20s. Sienna learned from them. She learned that my life was the comparison point that made hers shine brighter. If she was the bride, I was the warning. If she was chosen, I was overlooked. For years, I let them tell that story because correcting them took more energy than I wanted to give. I had shared important things before. When a hospital network credited my team with preventing a major shutdown, my mother replied with a heart emoji, then posted 12 photos from Sienna's venue tour. When I won a regional award for women in technology, my father said, "That is nice, honey," then asked if I had met anyone at the ceremony. When my company signed a major contract with a children's hospital, Sienna texted, "Congrats," and 3 minutes later asked if I could fix her guest list spreadsheet. They were not monsters every minute of the day, and that made it harder. They remembered birthdays. They sent soup when I was sick. They said they loved me, but their love always came with a ruler in its hand, measuring me against the life they wanted me to perform. Over time, I stopped giving them the real parts of me. I gave safe answers. Work is fine. The drive was fine. No, I am not seeing anyone. Yes, Sienna looks beautiful. I let them believe I was alone because the truth had become too precious to hand to people who could not hold it gently. What they did not know was that the loneliest version of me was the one I became around them. I met Adrian Marlowe 6 years before Sienna's wedding, in a hotel conference room in Denver during a medical technology summit that smelled like burnt coffee, printer ink, and ambition. I was there to present about hospital cybersecurity, not the glamorous kind of technology people like to imagine, but the kind that determines whether an emergency room can access blood type records during a crisis. Adrian was there as an emergency physician and director of a public health response program. He had spent years building systems for hospitals to keep functioning during storms, mass casualty events, and infrastructure failures. I first noticed him because he asked the only question that proved he had really listened. Most people asked about cost, insurance, and liability. Adrian asked what happened to patients when a hospital had the money to rebuild its systems, but not the trust of the people it had failed. I remember looking at him from the stage and thinking, finally, someone understands that behind every firewall is a human being waiting for care. After the session, he found me near a table of stale pastries and introduced himself. He was calm, direct, and not impressed with himself, which was rare in rooms full of people trying to sound important. He told me about a ransomware scare his hospital had survived. I told him about a rural clinic that had almost lost access to medication records because one employee clicked the wrong email. What was supposed to be a 10-minute professional conversation became 2 hours in the lobby, then dinner, then a walk through downtown Denver because neither of us wanted the conversation to end. Adrian listened in a way that felt almost dangerous at first, not because he was intense, but because he was present. He did not reduce me to my age, my relationship status, or whether my life looked soft enough to make other people comfortable. He asked what I cared about, then remembered the answer. For months, we called it networking. That is the word adults use when they are pretending not to wait for someone's name to appear on their phone. We emailed about hospital systems, then about books, food, and the exhaustion of being dependable in every room. He lived in Atlanta. I was splitting time between Charleston and Atlanta for clients. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became Sunday mornings at a farmer's market. A work trip became staying one extra day. The first time he held my hand, it felt less like a beginning than a recognition. I told him about my family slowly, my mother's obsession with appearances, my father's quiet judgment, Sienna's polished insults disguised as concern. I expected him to tell me all families were complicated. He did not. He said, "It sounds like they love the version of you that makes them feel right, not the version of you that is real. I had no defense against that sentence because it was true. A year after we met, Adrian asked me to marry him while we were staying near Asheville, North Carolina. There were no hidden photographers, no public performance. We were standing in a glass greenhouse after a rainstorm, surrounded by wet leaves and fogged windows, and he said he wanted a life with me that did not need an audience to be real. I said yes before he finished asking. 3 months later, we married in that same greenhouse with 14 people present. His parents, Walter and Marianne Marlowe, were there. My best friend Bianca Flores cried harder than anyone. A few of Adrian's colleagues came. My company's operations director, Ethan Rhodes, gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry in the same minute. My parents were not invited. Sienna was not invited. I did not make that decision out of cruelty. I made it out of protection. I knew what my mother would do with a wedding. She would ask about flowers before feelings, Adrian's family before his kindness, and whether the dress flattered me enough for photos. My father would ask Adrian about salary, property, and whether I planned to slow down after marriage. Sienna would somehow make herself the center of the room. I did not want my wedding to become another place where I had to shrink. So I chose peace. I chose vows under rain clouds. I chose Adrian's hands holding mine. I chose the people who saw me clearly before they celebrated me loudly. For one perfect day, nobody asked when I would finally be chosen. Everyone there already knew I had chosen myself first. For a while, keeping my marriage private felt like freedom. Adrian and I built a life that was warm, full, and almost shockingly normal in the best possible way. We had a loft in Midtown Atlanta with tall windows, too many books, and a kitchen island where most of our serious conversations happened while one of us cut vegetables and the other stole them. We worked too much, both of us, but we understood that about each other. Some nights he came home from the hospital carrying the exhausted silence of a man who had seen too much, and I sat beside him without forcing him to explain. Some nights I came home after 12 hours of emergency calls with a hospital client, and he put food in front of me before asking if I was ready to talk. We were not perfect. No real marriage is. But we were kind to each other on purpose. We did not weaponize embarrassment. We did not turn private fears into public jokes. We did not use love as a stage. That alone made my marriage feel safer than the family home I had grown up in. But secrecy had a cost. Every holiday, birthday, and family gathering in Charleston required a version of me that felt thinner than the truth. I would drive down alone, wearing my ring on a chain beneath my shirt, or leaving it at home because I did not want questions I was not ready to answer. My mother would hug me in the doorway and scan behind me, as if a man might appear if she looked disappointed enough. My father would ask if work was still so busy, in a tone that made busy sound like an illness. Sienna would arrive with gifts, stories, and the easy confidence of someone who knew the room had already agreed to admire her. I sat through bridal showers, church picnics, and anniversary dinners, while people asked if I was dating. My mother would answer before I could. Not yet, she would say brightly, we are hopeful. Hopeful, as if I were an unfinished renovation. Once, at a Christmas brunch, Patricia told 3 women from her charity circle that I was married to my laptop. They laughed. I smiled because I had trained myself to smile. That night, I called Adrian from my childhood bedroom and found him in our kitchen back in Atlanta, making tea in my favorite mug. I almost told him I was done hiding, but then I imagined my mother crying because she had been excluded, my father lecturing me about loyalty, and Sienna accusing me of stealing attention. So I swallowed the truth again. Adrian never pushed, which sometimes made me feel more guilty. He had every right to want to be known, yet he respected the wound enough not to grab it from my hands before I was ready to set it down. Still, I saw what my silence cost him. At our 4th anniversary dinner, the waiter asked if we were celebrating anything. Adrian smiled and said, "My wife is the best decision I ever made." I laughed. But later, I cried in the bathroom because my own parents did not know that sentence existed in the world. When my father had minor surgery, I drove to Charleston alone while Adrian texted me every hour. My mother praised me for being a devoted daughter, then added, "Imagine how much easier this would be if you had someone." I stared at that message until the letters blurred. I did have someone. I had someone who would have driven through the night, sat beside me, asked the surgeon better questions than anyone, and made sure I ate something besides vending machine crackers. But I had trained my family to believe I had no one, and they were happy to believe it because my loneliness made their worldview tidy. The week before Sienna's wedding, Adrian watched me pack a formal dress I did not want to wear. Then he said, "Are you going as yourself this time? Or as the version they can tolerate?" I hated how gently he said it because it was accurate. I told him I just needed to get through one weekend. He kissed my forehead and said, "Then get through it. But remember, peace that requires you to disappear is not peace." I carried that sentence into Charleston, through the rehearsal dinner, through my mother's fake smiles, through Sienna's comments about how brave I was to attend alone, and through my father introducing me to a widowed business associate like I was a house he had been trying to sell for too long. By the wedding day, I was tired in a way sleep could not fix. I did not arrive planning to reveal everything, but sometimes the truth waits quietly for years, and one cruel sentence opens the door. After I said I was already married, the ballroom seemed to forget how to breathe. My mother's fingers tightened around her champagne glass. My father stared at me like he could force my words back into my mouth through disapproval alone. Sienna's face went white beneath the perfect makeup she had paid someone $300 to apply. For one suspended second, nobody moved. Then my mother laughed. Not her real laugh. Her public laugh. The one she used when something had gone terribly wrong, but she wanted everyone to pretend it had not. "Eliza," she said, "do not be ridiculous. This is not the time for one of your dramatic little comments." I looked at her calmly. "I think you made it dramatic when you used your daughter's wedding toast to ask whether anyone would ever choose me." A few guests shifted in their seats. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." My father leaned forward, his voice low and sharp. "Enough. You are embarrassing this family." I almost laughed because the sentence was perfectly him. Not, "Are you hurt?" Not, "Is it true?" His first concern was the family image, the invisible statue my mother had spent her life polishing. Sienna stood halfway, clutching the edge of the table. "Eliza, stop. Today is my wedding." I turned to her. "I know. I did not come here to ruin it. But I also did not come here to be used as entertainment." Graham Prescott looked like a man realizing he had married into a room full of explosives. My mother set her glass down and spoke through clenched teeth. "Fine. If you are married, where is he?" She expected me to stumble, to blush, to admit I had invented him because I could not bear the humiliation. Instead, I picked up my phone. "His name is Adrian Marlowe," I said. "He is an emergency physician and director of a public health response program in Atlanta. We have been married for 5 years." The words landed one by one. Married. 5 years. Atlanta. Adrian. I unlocked my phone and opened the album I had avoided showing them for half a decade. I did not choose the most polished photos. I chose the real ones. Adrian and me under the glass roof in Asheville, my hair damp from rain, his hand wrapped around mine. Adrian in blue scrubs, asleep on our couch with one shoe still on after a 20-hour shift. The two of us at a hospital fundraiser, his hand at the small of my back, my wedding ring visible because that night I had not needed to hide it. A photo of us in front of my company's new Atlanta office, holding cheap coffee cups and smiling like two people who had built something together. I placed the phone on the table and slid it toward my mother. She stared at the screen but did not touch it. My father picked it up instead. I watched his face change. Confusion came first, then recognition that the photos were too ordinary to be fake. Then anger, because anger was easier than shame. "You got married without telling us," he said. "You let strangers attend while your own parents were left out?" I took the phone back. They were not strangers. They were people who knew how to be happy for me without making my happiness about themselves. My mother gasped like I had slapped her. "How dare you speak to us like that?" I felt years of swallowed answers rise in my throat, but my voice stayed steady. "Do you know what I do for a living?" My mother frowned. "This is not about work." "It is exactly about work," I said. "Do you know what my company does?" She looked at my father. My father looked away. Sienna's eyes dropped to the table. "You do something with computers?" my mother said finally. "Security, maybe." I nodded. "I protect hospitals from cyber attacks. My team helps keep emergency systems running when criminals try to shut them down. Last year, we helped a children's hospital avoid losing access to patient records during a ransomware attempt." I sent the article to the family group chat. You replied with a thumbs up emoji, then asked everyone which centerpiece looked better for Sienna's bridal shower. Nobody spoke. I turned to my father. "When I won the Harbor Women in Technology Award, you said, 'That is nice, honey,' and asked if I had met any decent men there." Then I turned to Sienna. "When my company opened its Atlanta office, you asked if I could review your vendor spreadsheet because I was probably free anyway." Sienna's eyes filled, but I had seen those tears before. Sometimes they were panic because the room had stopped protecting her. My mother's face twisted. "So this is revenge? You waited until your sister's wedding to punish us?" "No," I said. "I waited through years of being corrected, minimized, pitied, and laughed at. I waited through every dinner where you called me lonely in front of people. I waited through every prayer request you posted about me finding my path, as if I were lost because I did not look like Sienna. I waited until you stood up in front of a ballroom and asked if anyone would ever choose me. Then I decided you had finally earned the answer." A phone camera lowered quickly at a nearby table when I glanced over. That was when my mother understood this was bigger than our family. Other people had heard. Other people had seen. The perfect mother had made a cruel joke, and the daughter she mocked had turned out not to be pathetic, not abandoned, not waiting, but loved and married without her permission. My father tried one more time. "You should have told us privately." I looked at him. "I tried telling you things privately for years. You did not listen privately." My mother's lips trembled. "You robbed me of seeing my daughter get married." "No," I said softly. "You robbed yourself when you taught me that my happiest day would not be safe with you in the room." Sienna whispered. "I cannot believe you did this to me." I turned toward her, and my voice softened. "Sienna, I did not stand up during your vows. I did not interrupt your first dance. I did not insult you in front of your guests. Mom did. Dad helped. I only answered." Graham placed a hand on Sienna's back, but his eyes were on my parents, not me. That mattered. People were beginning to understand where the damage had come from. I picked up my clutch. My mother grabbed my wrist as I passed her. Not hard, but desperate. "Eliza, wait. We are not finished." I looked down at her hand until she let go. "Yes, we are," I said. "For tonight, we are." My father said my name in that warning tone that used to make me shrink. It did not work anymore. I looked at both of them one last time. "You did not lose an invitation to my wedding tonight. You lost the right to pretend you were excluded for no reason." Then I walked out of the ballroom, past the flowers, past the guest book, past the framed photo of Sienna and Graham smiling in perfect golden light. Behind me, the room erupted into whispers. In front of me, the hallway was quiet. My phone buzzed before I reached the elevator. It was Adrian. Just 2 words. "You okay?" I stared at the message, and for the first time all day I smiled. Then I typed back, I am now. The first video appeared online before midnight. I did not post it. I did not ask anyone to post it. I did not even know it existed until Bianca sent me a screenshot the next morning with the message, "Please breathe before you look at this." A guest had recorded my mother's toast from the moment she raised her glass. The video caught everything: the smile, the laugh, the words. 35, and still single. Will anyone ever choose you? My father's smirk. His sentence about some people being alone for a reason. Then my answer: I am already married. You did not deserve a seat at my wedding. The clip was only 47 seconds long, but it did more damage to my mother's image than decades of private cruelty ever could. By Sunday afternoon, it had moved through local Facebook groups, church circles, wedding vendor chats, and the kind of Charleston social networks that pretend to be polite while spreading gossip faster than fire on dry grass. At first, the comments were shocked. Then they became angry. People who had praised Patricia Langford for years as a devoted mother suddenly saw the part of her usually reserved for me. She tried to control the damage with a carefully worded post. It said, "In an emotional moment at my daughter's wedding, words were misunderstood, and I am sorry if anyone was hurt." That made things worse. The phrase, "if anyone was hurt," became its own punishment. People quoted it back to her. One woman from her charity committee commented, "Patricia, there was nothing misunderstood about asking your daughter if anyone would choose her." Another wrote, "Maybe the daughter who was mocked is not the one who owes anyone an explanation." By Monday, the children's literacy fundraiser where my mother was scheduled to introduce the keynote speaker quietly removed her name from the program. She told people she had stepped back to focus on family healing. I knew because 3 relatives sent me screenshots. Privacy. That word almost made me laugh. She had never offered me privacy when she used my supposed loneliness as a conversation starter. My father's consequences came more slowly, but they cut deep because they touched business. Martin Langford sold high-end real estate to families who cared about reputation, school districts, porch columns, and whether a man looked trustworthy in a navy blazer. The video made him look small, not criminal, not ruined, just small. A client preparing to list a waterfront property with him chose someone else. A country club committee postponed voting on his board nomination. Nobody said it was because of the video. People like that rarely say the real reason out loud. They used phrases like timing, sensitivity, and family matters. My father understood. For the first time in his life, he had been judged by a public moment he could not explain away. He called me 3 days after the wedding. I let it go to voicemail. His message was stiff. "Your mother is very upset," he said. "This has gone too far." I listened twice, waiting for an apology that never came. Then I deleted it. Sienna's reaction was messier. At first, she sent a long text accusing me of humiliating her at her own wedding. She said guests were talking more about me than about her dress, her vows, or her reception design. She said Graham's relatives were asking uncomfortable questions. She said I had stolen the attention. I read it at my kitchen island in Atlanta while Adrian quietly made coffee across from me. When I handed him the phone, he read it and said, "She is not ready to be honest yet." He was right. 3 days later, Sienna sent another message. "Did you plan to say it that night?" I typed back, "No." She replied, "Then why does it feel like we all walked into something that was waiting for us?" I stared at that sentence for a long time because it was the closest she had ever come to understanding. The truth had been waiting, not as a trap, but as a debt. Every joke, every comparison, every public little wound had added interest. Eventually, someone had to pay. My mother's second apology post came a week later, and I knew someone had helped her write it because it sounded less polished and more human. She admitted she had humiliated me. She admitted she had confused control with concern. She admitted she had praised one daughter by diminishing the other. It was not perfect. It still centered her shame more than my pain. But it was the first time I had seen my mother name what she had done without dressing it up as love. I did not comment. I did not like the post. I did not call to comfort her. That silence was hard for her because she was used to emotional cleanup. She was used to saying something hurtful, crying when confronted, and letting the injured person become responsible for making her feel forgiven. I refused to play that role anymore. My father texted, "We need to talk." I replied with one sentence. "We can talk when you are ready to apologize without explaining why you think I made you do it." He did not respond for 2 days. When he finally did, he wrote, "I do not know how to do this." It was the most honest thing he had ever sent me. I wrote back, "Start there." The wedding that was supposed to prove Sienna was the chosen daughter became the event that exposed the cost of choosing one child as the family trophy, and the other as the family warning. My mother lost the admiration she had mistaken for love. My father lost the public authority he had mistaken for character. Sienna lost the fantasy that being favored meant being safe, and I lost something too. I lost the last reason to keep protecting their version of me. 3 months after the wedding, my parents asked to come to Atlanta. Not demanded, not announced, asked. That difference mattered enough for me to answer. Adrian and I talked about it for 2 nights before I agreed. He never told me what to do. He asked what outcome I wanted, what boundary I needed, and what I would do if they crossed it. Those questions helped more than advice. I told my parents they could come for dinner, but there would be conditions. No photos, no social media posts, no speeches about healing, no pretending the past was a misunderstanding. If they wanted to meet my husband, they had to meet him as a person, not as proof that I had finally become acceptable. My mother replied first, "I understand." My father replied an hour later, "We will respect that." I did not fully believe either of them, but I believed they were trying. That was enough for one dinner. Not enough for full trust. When they arrived, my mother brought simple white tulips wrapped in brown paper. Her hands shook when she gave them to me. My father stood beside her looking older than he had at the wedding. Adrian opened the door with the calm kindness he gives everyone until they give him a reason not to. He shook my father's hand, hugged my mother when she awkwardly reached for him, and welcomed them into the home they had not known existed. I watched my mother look around our loft, the books by the window, the framed wedding photo on the shelf, the 2 coffee mugs near the sink, the evidence of a real marriage everywhere, ordinary and undeniable. For once, she did not comment on how it looked. She just looked. Dinner was careful at first. My father asked Adrian about emergency medicine, and Adrian answered without performing. My mother asked how long we had lived there. I said 4 years. She flinched. 4 years of holidays, birthdays, phone calls, and casual insults had passed, while I came home to this place, and they imagined me eating takeout alone. Halfway through dinner, my father set down his fork. "I owe you an apology," he said. His voice was rough. "I thought I was joking at the wedding. I thought I was backing up your mother. But I understand now that I was helping humiliate you. I have done that before. More than once. I am sorry. It was not a perfect apology, but it was clean. No but. No if. No explanation." I nodded. "Thank you," I said. My mother started crying before she spoke. In the past, her tears would have pulled me out of myself. I would have comforted her, softened the truth, made her feel less guilty. This time, I waited. She wiped her face and said, "I wanted people to think I had raised a perfect family. I cared so much about how we looked that I stopped seeing who you were." Then she looked at Adrian. "I am sorry I made you someone my daughter had to protect from us." Adrian's expression changed. Not softened exactly, because he had never been cruel, but opened. He said, "Eliza did not hide me because she was ashamed of me. She hid me because she had learned that her joy was not safe with you. I hope you understand the difference. My mother covered her mouth and nodded. That sentence stayed in the room for a long time. After dinner, my parents asked about the wedding. I showed them 6 photos. Not the whole album. Just 6. The greenhouse. The rain. Bianca crying. Adrian laughing. My hand in his. The small cake we cut while everyone clapped. My mother cried again, quietly this time, and did not ask me to make her feel better. My father said, "You looked happy." I said, "I was." He nodded like that answer hurt. And maybe it should have. Sienna reached out later that week. Her message said, "I have been thinking about how many times I let Mom compare us because it benefited me. I am sorry. I do not know how to fix it, but I want to learn how to be your sister without needing to be the better daughter." I read it 3 times. Then I replied, "We can start with honesty. We are not close now. I do not know if we ever will be. But sometimes, healing does not begin with closeness. Sometimes it begins with the first conversation where nobody lies." My relationship with my parents is different now. Smaller, but more truthful. They do not get unlimited access to my life because they apologized. An apology is not a key. It is a knock at the door. Trust decides whether the door opens, how far, and for how long. I still love them, but I no longer let that love cost me my dignity. I no longer attend family events where jokes about my life are treated as harmless. I no longer explain my boundaries to people committed to misunderstanding them. Adrian and I continue to build the life we protected for years. We work, we travel when we can, we burn dinner sometimes, we argue about thermostat settings, and we sit on the couch after hard days letting silence be kind instead of heavy. That is love to me now. Not performance, not approval, not being chosen in a way that makes others comfortable. Real love is respect when nobody is watching. Real family is not the one that uses your pain to make a joke land better at a wedding. Real family is the one that can be trusted with your joy. What happened that night taught me something I wish I had learned earlier. Your value is not decided by your marital status, your parents' expectations, your siblings' achievements, or the story other people tell because your real life does not fit their favorite picture. Education is not only what we learn in school or from books. Sometimes the most valuable knowledge comes from finally understanding that peace without self-respect is not peace at all. If people only love you when you are easy to explain, easy to control, or easy to compare, then what they love may be their image of you, not your heart. Protect your happiness, protect your name, protect the parts of your life that are still tender. And if the people closest to you ever make you feel like you must hide your joy to keep their approval, remember this. You were never born to be the smaller version of yourself just so someone else could feel big. Have you ever had to hide something beautiful in your life because you were afraid your own family would judge it? If you have, I hope you know you are not alone, and I hope one day you find the courage to stop asking people who hurt you for permission to be whole.
Our team is dedicated to creating original fictional stories that can entertain, inspire reflection, and deliver useful messages. This video was written only for storytelling and educational value. We hope the story reminds viewers that betrayal may change you, but it does not have to destroy your future.